Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Nikki Law, and on behalf of MindTickle, we hope everyone is safe and doing okay. As always, we're committed to providing resilient business services to our customers, partners, and the extended enablement community. And in that spirit, we wanted to host this webinar to share some best practice tips on how enablement and thought leaders are pivoting to a virtual sales learning culture given their sales force is now working from home. Our goal is to keep this webinar concise and prescriptive. So today we'll cover what we're seeing in the field and how enablement leaders are quickly pivoting to this new way of training and learning, particularly focused around hosting virtual events and creating short trainings that engage and drive productivity for your reps. Then we'll host a Q&A, so please add your questions to the chat box and we'll address them at the end. And to share these best practices, I'd like to introduce Adam Lieber.
Hi, everyone. My name's Adam. I work on a professional services team specifically focusing on enterprise implementations, as well as program and product management and consulting.
I love it, Adam. And thank you for bringing your knowledge to this webinar. And I'm Nikki Lott. I'm on the product marketing team here at MindTickle. So the new reality is almost everyone is working from home. Sales events and kickoffs are being postponed, or there's a fast pivot to host them virtually. Similarly, in new hire boot camps and other in-person meetings and training sessions are going virtual as well. But as we're all adapting to this new way of working, how are you as a sales enablement leader making sure your reps are still engaged and productive, especially when working from home looks more like this for a lot of people? Juggling kids with conference calls, taking care of pets that are so excited you're home all the time now, or even roommates who are just always around. We're more distracted than ever, from just keeping tabs about what's going on in the world to within our own home environment. This requires enablement leaders to reevaluate their approach and to learning and development, field training, and manager and field interactions, and effectively pivoting to a virtual sales learning culture. So to kick off our discussion, Adam, can you share how enablement can turn in-person trainings, such as large-scale meetings and boot camps, into virtual trainings to accommodate people working from home?
Yeah, of course. So I think we're going to use this slide as an example right here. But ultimately, whenever we have these big in-person trainings, specifically with sales organizations, the idea is we're going to bring everyone out because we want FaceTime. We want to align people on specific areas in which they need to learn. Maybe it's something like an SKO where you want to motivate or educate people so that they're ready to sell for the rest of the quarter. So even in the landscape of 1 month ago, which somehow seems so far back, a lot of companies who are going to make this massive investment to fly everyone to a location, put them into a hotel, rent out a venue, and potentially take these people, off or out of the field from selling, are using pre-work that could be delivered through some type of virtual method already, where the idea is to align every single person so they have a baseline knowledge set, right? Different people are going to come from different backgrounds. Someone might have a ton of background in the specific industry they work in, but less experience in the role that they're in, where someone else might be the exact opposite. So the idea of this pre-work is to level set that knowledge so that you can focus the ever so important time where you've gathered everyone together to focus on discussions, FaceTime, or other types of breakout sessions that you wouldn't necessarily be able to do when you aren't in an in-person setting. Yeah. So that would be the during also, right? Where we're breaking out into those specific sessions and having the FaceTime. But the other piece that is really, really important if you're making that investment is post-work. If you're spending all this money to go over these specific topics, let's make sure that you're actually reinforcing the knowledge and that people are actually practicing what they're learning in everyday life of their job. And if you are able to identify some type of gap based on this training, let's figure out how to kind of build upon that or help develop people's skills so they're continuing to use everything that they learned at that in-person meeting.
Right. I really like this recap of just how people are handling or how people handled sales kickoffs in general, how there was still a pre-work, during, and post-work format to these events, at least from a sales enablement practitioner's point of view. Mm-hmm. But what's the new reality?
Yeah. So I would say the biggest change isn't the pre-work or the post-work. I mean, you could technically combine everything into one program if you'd like. But ultimately, the biggest change is the during, right? It's because you're not actually having this direct in-person training. You're not necessarily getting the same amount of FaceTime, and all that time and the preparation you may have done, where people are going to sit through days worth of presentations and be able to talk and break out into different sessions with each other. It's not going to necessarily be the same. So what we're suggesting for the actual during is kind of changing your approach a little bit and focusing on self-paced learning, making everything consumable for taking in an online fashion, as well as still using some type of virtual breakout sessions or discussions. But if you're going to have someone sit there on a webcam, make sure that you don't have 1,000 sales reps on one call. You're actually having people, sign up to have specific discussions with each other. And then lastly, still make sure you're rewarding top performers, because specifically if this is an SKO, that's something that is really, really important.
Absolutely. And I kind of want to double tap on that self-paced learning bit, because I think it's so important, as was mentioned in the introduction, that people have a lot going on right now in their own at-home lives, that during the standard in-person live SKOs, you have them there in their seats. There's nowhere else for them to go. But now they're balancing kids, pets, whatever else is going on. So can you just kind of discuss more about the importance of self-paced learning and maybe how you can develop that sort of program for teams?
Yeah, of course. So I think you made a really good point, right? If someone's sitting at their desk and they have kids, their kids are probably going to be really, really, really distracting, because, kids are always going to be the priority. So if someone is going to be at home, you're not going to be able to have them sit there and listen to 8 hours of presentations in a row. On top of all of that, where it's probably not a good experience to sit in front of your computer for 6 hours or your phone. People have this attention span that tends to not last for more than 20 minutes. In some people's cases, it's actually less than that. So it's going to be really important to take all these presentations that someone, that you guys may have prepared already for these long extended sessions, and break those down into something that's more bite-sized and consumable, that is straight to the point of everything that you want to get through, right? So if someone is able to sit there and maybe wants to go through all of the upcoming product change presentations, instead of that being an hour-long, panel discussion or whatever you were planning initially, maybe try to find a way to break that down into 10 minutes or a bunch of different 5-minute chunks that you could be breaking up with different knowledge check questions, just to make sure, not to test them on what they're going through, but it's more to reinforce specifically the important points that they were just being taught as part of that presentation. This is actually something that would be more difficult to do in person than it would be to do in an online setting.
No, I think that's a great point. And that kind of perfectly leads into our next topic discussion of creating these short, bite-sized trainings to keep reps engaged and to keep them productive where you can. Can you share about what you've been seeing in the field regarding bite-sized training?
Yeah, sure. So, obviously, if we're going to transition everything to be self-paced and moving things online, we do want to make it more consumable. And having someone sitting in front of their computer for hours at a time listening to a long, extended presentation is never going to be the way you want to do any type of online training. It would go the same for if you were hosting a Zoom meeting, right? If you have 1,000 people sitting in on a meeting, most of them necessarily aren't going to just be listening to the entire thing. They might get distracted because they're at home. They could go on the internet. Maybe their kid is reaching out to them. Maybe their dog runs through the room. Who knows?
Yeah.
So when you're designing this training and you're breaking everything up, it's really important to focus on what is actually the essential pieces of the presentation that you're going through. So something that might happen is maybe you're doing an introduction in an in-person training of an entire team. Maybe it's the marketing team who's been working on a specific type of campaign that's going to be run, right? Maybe someone's taking 5 to 10 minutes in that long, live presentation, talking about each individual person and what their roles are. If you were to transition something like that into an online version of the training, it wouldn't necessarily make as much sense to walk through the whole thing as to just upload one slide that shows everyone, who everyone is, and a little blurb about themselves that individual could go through at their own pace. But because it's not necessarily super essential to them being able to actually do their job and go out and sell every day, it's not necessarily something we need to focus as much attention on.
No, I think that's a great point. And it's almost like one of the comments I've seen recently is, how many meetings can we make emails? Try to keep it as concise as possible and give people the ability to control how they're learning and what they're learning, or to go through it on their own pace.
Yep, definitely. And actually that segues us right into the next thing, which is focus on impactful activities. There are always tons and tons of events that occur or things that get talked about that aren't directly related to what you're trying to get across, right? So every time we run any type of enablement program, we focus on this approach of teach, show, practice, and then reinforce. This would be no different. If you follow this methodology, every time you're rolling out any type of online training, the first thing you should do is actually teach specifically what you're looking to teach. And this can also include those knowledge check questions I meant beforehand, because we're looking to test, we're looking to test to teach the training, not test for the sake of testing, right? Those are two very different things. We want to just make sure we're driving home whatever is important in that training. If you're going to take the time to show something related to these impactful activities, it would be like showing what is the best practice example of specifically what we just taught you. Practice could be something where you're actually making them go in and like do something like a role play, for example, right? Someone's actually going to go through and demonstrate the skills that they're trying to develop and have someone go through and give them some feedback over time, or even directly on the spot of what they need to get done or what they need to drive home to make sure they truly understand what they're doing. And then most importantly is making sure you're reinforcing those impactful activities, right? After you've done this training, you don't want it to just go away because, based on the forgetting curve, within 30 days, people are going to forget about, something like 60% of what they've learned. We want to make sure we're taking those really important moments that this person has been taught, that they've been shown, and that they've been told to practice, and make sure we're reinforcing it using anything from training that we've decided to develop as a result of gaps we've found. Maybe it's we want to just roll out bite-sized quiz questions or something like that that are pushed to their phones or sent to them on their laptops, just to reinforce specifically what we had trained on.
No, I think you're making really good points, and I love how this is a cycle. That it's, again, learning is never over. It's not like you're done and you get the certificate and you walk away. Especially in sales and how fast-paced a lot of industries are, there are always new things to consume, new market trends to watch out for, new competitors popping up. So I think this is, it's a great model to follow just in terms of how to lay out a program that reinforces what you're teaching, that is a full, it's a constantly moving organism, basically, of how do you adapt and how do you address the challenges that you're seeing every day. And I also wanted to double tap into that practice piece. Not only is this helping to focus on revenue generating activities and displaying the skills that are involved with that, but it also helps kind of create this culture of engagement and learning of you're doing this all for a reason, and you can see the growth over time as well. As reps master that pitch deck, you can see them growing and developing, and they can see it themselves. And so just seeing that development kind of goes beyond just the everyday job, but also you can see how the person is growing as well.
Yeah, definitely. And a really good example of this also. So there's a company I was working with pretty recently where they were having an issue where their sales ops team actually went in and they were able to identify that they had lost about 10% more deals to one specific competitor in the previous 2 quarters than they had beforehand, which is something that in the past, maybe it's one of the activities they choose to focus on if their sales kickoff or their quarterly meeting that they would run.
Yeah.
But what they actually chose to do was say, we've made this, we've done this, we figured this out. They invested the time into actually doing a lot of additional research and putting together new messaging and new, competitive battle cards against this specific competitor in order to try to close that gap. So what they did is they rolled out a pretty, decent sized course where they're going over the changes in their own product, the changes in their competitor's product, and how to position, all within this one course where they're teaching them everything. After that, they actually rolled out about a 2-minute pitch that they had 2 people do. They had their VP of sales do a pitch, and they went through and found one of their top performing reps who had been doing relatively well against this competitor, and had them record a pitch on how they would handle specific objections against that competitor. With all of that information presented to them, right, they then rolled out a program where they had everyone go through and record their own version of handling these objections against that competitor, all of their sales reps. And this was actually slightly different for their sales reps, their business development representatives, and even their sales engineers had their own little version of it. All of these were then sent to their managers, and their managers went through and reviewed them based off of the training that the managers had done on these updates as well. So what they end up getting here is, one, their managers are identifying and are able to help coach their reps on the areas that they might be struggling in. The business is getting all this information now about what people are improving upon, where they might still be struggling, and so on. That's actually coming directly from the managers. And that then allows them to go in, identify the areas that they still need to improve on, and then build upon those areas and reinforce the things that they've already been trained on.
No, I love that story. I think it's a great example of peer-to-peer learning, of and having enablement programs directly affect revenue in that case as well. It's one of the things we hear is how does enablement get more clout within the business? It's a very much supporting role, but it's a very effective role. And I think that's a perfect example of how enablement really steps up to the plate and addresses the challenges head on. And I think that's also a great segue into your last bullet point about how, especially with managers, how you hold reps accountable.
Yep. So I'm sure everyone's experienced the same thing where they're about to roll out a big training, they send it out, and the first thing they get back is a bunch of reps just super excited to go through and take this training.
It happens at MindTickle every day.
Oh, every day, for sure. But no, in all seriousness, training is something that is 100% necessary for someone to go through, but it doesn't necessarily always, it's not necessarily always going to be the thing people are excited to take. So when you're rolling out programs, we focus on, making sure that reps feel like the training is directly related to things that are going to help them sell and be better at their jobs. And then also making sure everything they're doing is going to be, impactful. What we can do is we can also make sure that their managers have full visibility into what training the reps have done and how the reps are understanding that level of training, right? These could be done doing weekly reports or just presenting managers with some type of dashboard, or as in the example that I mentioned beforehand, involving reps in the enablement of their own teams, where you could have reps running different coaching sessions where they might be, inputting certain information about, how the different reps are doing, or even grading something like that virtual role play I had mentioned, where managers are actually sitting there, seeing how their reps are doing and providing their feedback. So they have a good idea of exactly what reps have been doing, if they're understanding the training and so on.
And I think this is a great way to ensure that these virtual coaching moments are still happening, given that everyone is working from home, and maybe a BDR manager can't shadow phone calls the same way. This helps them still maintain that level of engagement and accountability, really, that is maybe not on the top of people's minds as they're at home. Thank you, Adam. I think this was a great roundup of just some of the top couple things that we're just hearing from the field. And I'm excited and hope that you'll join us again to share more best practices out